Now that Daniel Craig's rough and rugged 007 has, spoiler alert, been blown to smithereens by his own rockets, attention is turned to see how EON Pictures and Sony can reinvent the character again, and more importantly, just who will take the iconic role of suave super spy James Bond. Various names have been dropped in relation to the coveted role recently: Idris Elba, Tom Hardy, Richard Madden, Tom Hiddleston, Bridgerton's Rege-Jean, Outlander star Sam Heughan, Daniel Kaluuya, Henry Golding, along with Supes and The Witcher himself, Henry Cavill, to name just some of the names being thrown around. Perhaps, as producer Barbara Broccoli recently hinted at, albeit very vaguely, the new Bond would be non-binary. Or perhaps a woman. Let us know in the comments which direction you think they should go in. With the world needing a new Bond to carry on the franchise, what better time than now to pitch the last movie to successfully reinvent the character? 2006's Casino Royale against arguably the other strongest entry in the Craig series, 2012's Skyfall. When Daniel Craig was unveiled as the new Bond in a massive media event in 2005, which Craig would later go on to describe as a fucking train wreck.
It's a fucking train wreck.
Fans were up in arms over the actor wearing a life jacket aboard the Royal Navy boat that brought him down the Thames, apparently chewing gum, being too blonde, and also being a little short to embody their beloved James Bond. Just imagine being cast as a legendary spy in today's more advanced digital world of instant public opinion.
Bring tears to your eyes.
Daunting. However, Craig went on to defy his critics in what was a muscular and franchise-saving turn as Bond, and although a writer's strike partially affected the quality of follow-up Quantum of Solace in 2008, Skyfall brought a more human Bond to the franchise and is regarded as one of the greatest Bond movies of all time. So grab a martini, shaken not stirred, of course, as we discover which of these Bond behemoths will win the day and which will sink faster than a Venetian apartment block, because you know by now what it's time for. Face Off!
Disclaimer. No actual science was used to determine the outcome of Face Off. Your results may vary. Please do not consume Face Off if you are allergic to conjecture, opinion, or general nonsense.
Round 1. Plot. With Casino Royale having the unenviable task of resurrecting a franchise that, despite some stellar work by the dashing legendary Pierce Brosnan in previous entries, had become cartoonish, uninspired, and frankly laughable, the writing team went back to author Ian Fleming's first novel for inspiration. The plot therefore sees an inexperienced Bond earn his 00 status and license to kill before going on his first mission, where he must defeat a private banker funding terrorists in a high-stakes game of poker at Casino Royale, Montenegro. Here, Bond is more authentic to the books, and his edgy, haunted past is fascinating to watch as he navigates the mission, making mistakes along the way, and finally discovering what it means to be compromised, both in the field and emotionally. Skyfall's plot sees a mission in Madagascar go very wrong as Bond is accidentally shot. Nice one, Moneypenny. At least shoot the bad guy as well next time. And presumed dead. When MI6 is attacked by a former agent with an axe to grind with Dame Judi Dench's M, a freshly resurrected and definitely not dead Bond must confront both his and M's past to discover what his role in the world really is. The script cuts to the core of Bond in a fresh, intriguing way, and it was a bold move to portray Bond as almost a broken man, taking away some of his confidence and agency. This insight into Bond's past is something the franchise hasn't delved too deep into before, and while some plot points don't quite work, it is nonetheless an excellent narrative overall. Verdict: Casino Royale. Round 2. Cinematography. The cinematography in Bond films has traditionally been very impressive. The various exotic locations help to transport audiences away from their own existence into the escapist world of Bond. Isn't that what cinema is all about anyway? Escapism? Casino Royale's locations are stunningly captured, and cinematographer Phil Mayhew made the best of them to great effect. The shot of Bond appearing from the water in the Bahamas looks beautiful, with the ocean reflecting the sun right around him. Well, the film's overall tone is heavily established by how the characters are framed, whether it's in a casino playing a high-stakes hand of poker or in the famously murky, impactful torture scene.
I've got a little itch down there. Would you mind?
On the other end, Skyfall knows exactly how to make the most of Bond's continent-hopping adventures and features some of the most elegantly shot scenes in the entire franchise. One character mutters the line, "We can't keep working in the shadows. There are no more shadows," around the halfway mark. However, cinematographer Roger Deakins would beg to disagree with this statement. The movie is visually daring and uses silhouettes akin to film noir, showing people coming in and out of shadows to depict their own mortality or to carefully frame a fight sequence. The Shanghai set showdown between Bond and Patrice looks extraordinary, and the contrast between the action against the glowing blue jellyfish is nothing short of incredible. The movie also features a gorgeous Macau casino sequence, and the use of silhouettes during the climax's burning house look sensational. Verdict: Skyfall. Round 3, Bond Ambition. The 007 franchise is ubiquitous for numerous reasons, one in particular being how different actors have brought their own spin on the character, injecting their own unique style and one-liners to the films.
She always did enjoy a good squeeze.
So when Daniel Craig's aforementioned reveal to the world as Bond was initially met with disdain, he has actually gone on to become many fans' favorite Bond overall. But how did both movies deal with their own depiction of the character, and which one really dug deeper into his psyche? Casino Royale brought a tough yet flawed Bond, and the opening scene shot in black and white is a brutal, unflinching introduction for the character, with the spy smashing heads into restroom sinks and taking no prisoners in doing so. It's an effective way to display just how different this Bond is to the debonair clinical Brosnan entries.
This may be too much for a blunt instrument to understand.
And the rest of the movie doesn't let up on Bond as a blunt weapon, as M refers to him, as he gets his hands dirty in order to get the job done. With audiences now fully on board with Craig's fierce, yet also softer, more vulnerable take on Bond, director Sam Mendes and the writers were able to break down just what exactly makes him tick and composed a more humanistic take on the character than we've ever seen before. Bond has always been an emotionally distant character, usually hiding behind womanizing.
Well, that's quite a nice little nothing you're almost wearing. I approve.
Alcoholism and witty quips in order to cope with his past, yet Skyfall manages to strike the perfect balance within all of this. His relationship with M is more thoroughly developed than it has ever been, making it all seem like a million miles away from their fractious relationship in previous entries, and appearing more like a mother-son dynamic. Bond is more exposed in Skyfall, and although he is still charming as hell when he needs to be, this covers up his inner turmoil and conflict about exactly how he fits in with MI6 and specifically M's plans for him. Verdict: Skyfall. Round 4, Action and Set Pieces. If you're going to introduce a stronger, bolder, strapping Bond, then you have to make sure that he has explosive set pieces in which to dispatch the bad guys, and Casino Royale delivers this in spades, pun intended. Especially during two very prominent chase sequences, the parkour chase towards the beginning of the movie and the airport sequence later on. The parkour sequence sees Bond as a relentless machine, hell-bent on getting the job done at any cost by smashing through walls after his target leaps over it and adapting to his environment when required. Up until this point, we've only seen Bond kill two people in relative isolation, one via somber execution in a high-rise building and the other in a violent restroom fisticuffs. The Miami airport chase scene is outstanding and could have been the finale of most standard action movies, and feels almost like a mini-movie in and of itself. It starts with Bond seducing a woman for information and continues in an absurd amount of rising action after he's ditched the woman, we may note, and culminates in him achieving his task by killing the villain, smiling as his own explosive device destroys him. It's a thrilling and a clever nod to earlier iterations of the character. Skyfall's opening sequence is as epic as it is ridiculous, with Bond in pursuit of Ola repasses Patrice and rips half a carriage off a moving train, using a digger of course, and leaps onto locomotive to continue the pursuit. It's a mightily impressive stunt, but the cherry on top is when Bond lands on the back of the train and nonchalantly checks his cufflink is in order before moving down the carriage. Impeccable style there, Mr. Bond. The resulting top-of-a-train fight is choreographed exceptionally well and culminates in Bond seemingly falling to his death death after being shot by Moneypenny. He falls a long way down from the bridge and lands head first in the river, and yet survives this and being shot. It's a great sequence, and the rest of the Bond franchise has similarly over-the-top sequences. So, we can let this one slide into the drawer labeled suspension of disbelief. The rest of the movie features many other memorable action beats: the casino tussle, complete with Komodo dragons, the MI6 explosion, courthouse shootout, plus a decent underground section with an inexplicably empty tube train crashing. Have you ever been on a tube train, Mr. Mendez? The climax of the movie offers some excellent action as well as emotional beats, but it feels a little too much like a very high-budget Home Alone ripoff in places. Verdict: Casino Royale. Round 5, Bond Girls. The Bond Girls, one of the most debated aspects of Bond movies, especially now that the most recent installment, No Time to Die, was finally unleashed from pandemic hell. To be fair, the franchise has had its share of strong female roles in the past: Thumper and Bambi, ridiculously named Pussy Galore, Grace Jones's Kick-Ass Mayday, and Dr. Christmas Jones. Kidding, Christmas clearly only comes once a year, folks. But Bond has always found ways in which to get the upper hand on them. Gone, however, in the more recent movies is the innuendo
I finished dressing.
Oh, please don't, not on my account.
and sexism that was part of the franchise for a long time, and in its place we have female characters that are written with more agency and who have greater bearing on Bond and overall narrative. One of the highlights of Casino Royale, and in fact any Bond movie, is Eva Green's Vesper Lynd, an intelligent, beautiful treasury agent who gets closer to Bond than anyone, bringing out his gentler side and ultimately breaking his heart. Judi Dench's turn as M in the franchise continues to bring an astute, classy presence to the proceedings in Skyfall. However, other than Naomi Harris's Moneypenny, there is no clear love interest for Bond this time around. The film focuses more on his relationship with M, and it is this Bond, no pun intended, that forms the backbone of the story. So aside from a quick tryst with a lady in a perfectly fitting dress, the most action Bond gets in Skyfall is with Javier Bardem's Silva, who ties him up and threatens him suggestively. Verdict: Casino Royale. Round 6, Bond Villains. Rewatch any of the previous Bond films, and despite some of the obvious flaws they have when looked upon retrospectively, one thing always stands out: they will almost constantly have a memorable villain who may or may not give Bond just a little too much time to escape from that elaborately placed laser that's about to melt his nuts off.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Therefore, the problem with reinventing Bond in Casino Royale meant they also needed to pit him against a foe who would match our favorite spy in intellect, if not in muscle. Le Chiffre is a great villain and is played by perfection by Mads Mikkelsen, and what sets him apart from other Bond villains is that he is almost as flawed as the fledgling Bond we meet in this iteration. Le Chiffre isn't a villain at the top of the food chain. Conversely, he is a private banker to terrorists who entrust him with a vast sum of money to invest for them, and ultimately loses the cash, forcing him to organize the high-stakes poker tournament at the heart of the movie. He has some classic Bond villain attributes: an eye that weeps blood, dispensable girlfriend, and an obvious penchant for torture. Audiences have come to expect a certain flamboyant flourish or trademark trait that separates them from your bog-standard bad guys, such as Le Chiffre weeping blood, for example, and it all started with that darned cute little white cat, of course. Javier Bardem Silva, on the other hand, is almost like a mirror image of Bond, with his background being a former MI6 agent with a clear, obvious grudge against Judi Dench's M. Fans initially thought his blonde fright wig would be part of his signature look until the effect of attempted suicide by cyanide is revealed when Silva removes his false teeth to show his zombified, hollowed-out features. It's a shocking twist, and despite some slightly dodgy CGI, is a powerful introduction for the character while simultaneously showing audiences how much M and the Secret Service are responsible for the making of this monster. Verdict: Skyfall. Round 7, Iconic Moments. If you were asked to name the most iconic moments in any Bond film to date, what would they be? Hit us up in the comments and let us know. Would it be the obligatory gun barrel and credit sequence, the one-liners,
You always were a cunning linguist, James.
vodka martini shaken not stirred, evil villains in underground lairs, or the score? Well, both movies here feature most of the previously mentioned moments plus plenty more. Casino Royale contains the parkour and airport sequences we mentioned in the action round that are now unforgettable moments for fans, while the Texas Hold'em poker tournament is remarkable for all the right reasons, including a mid-game death by poisoning, then a desperate resurrection for Bond, a henchman death scene followed by Bond comforting Vesper in the shower, both fully clothed. We're also treated to one of the most brutal torture scenes in recent cinematic history that presented how Daniel Craig's Bond would be different to any that came before. Villain Lashif is played by amazing Mads Mikkelsen, ties a naked Bond to the chair, removes part of the seat, and proceeds to bludgeon Bond's nether region with a thickly knotted rope in a futile attempt to get information from him. Man, that is not gonna tickle. Slightly less gruesome or wince-inducing are the iconic moments from Skyfall, but they are no less impactful in their own right. Like Casino Royale, we have already mentioned two of the most renowned moments in the action round, the opening train chase and Shanghai fight scene, but Skyfall manages to pack in many other iconic moments. The introduction of Rafe Fiennes' new character Mallory is terrific, with the head of MI6 giving a dressing down to M like an old-school headmaster, along with Bond's meeting of the new Q, played by Paddington Bear himself, no less, Ben Whishaw. Sparks fly between the pair, and the ongoing conflict between old and new is exactly what Skyfall is all about. The courtroom scene also gives fans a special treat, with M's reading of the poem Ulysses by Lord Tennyson, perfectly echoing Bond's frantic race to the scene and devastating shootout that follows. These are just a few of the indelible sequences within Skyfall, and it's a testament to director Sam Mendes and his team of writers that they are so aware of what makes a Bond movie work so well. Now, folks, the gloves are off in what has been a bloody, bruising encounter, with both Bond movies doing their best to prove that they have truly earned their 00 status. However, on this occasion, we can only have one movie left standing, so by the width of one of Blofeld's cat's whiskers, this round and this face-off goes to Casino Royale. But don't let us have the final word. Tell us in the comments which 007 Craig outing is your favorite, Casino Royale or Skyfall. And as always, thanks for watching.
The name's Bond. James Bond.